of these events, stressing that terrorism and extremism have no place in our societies. We have had a long and intense Foreign Affairs Council in which we took an important decision to promote and protect human rights around the world. 2 weeks after we adopted sanctions linked to the Navalny case, we have taken decisive actions against responsible for serious human rights violations and abuses in 6 countries. The sanctions that the Council adopted today concern 11 individuals and 4 entities from China, North Korea, Libya, South Sudan, Eritrea, and Russia. It is appropriate that we took the decision on a day when we also had an important exchange with the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, and set up a strategic dialogue with her office. The package targets very serious human rights violations and abuses independently of the place where they are being committed. All European restrictive measures comply with international law and are subject to highest standard of the rule of law. As I said, this package includes 4 individuals and 1 entity from China who have had an active role in the design and implementation of the Chinese policies in Xinjiang. We were made aware during the meeting that China has retaliated to those sanctions and rather than change its policies and address our legitimate concerns, China has again turned a blind eye, and these measures are regrettable and unacceptable. There will be no change in the European Union determination to defend human rights and to respond to serious violations and abuses, as I said, irrespective of where they are committed. The China retaliatory sanctions affects, among others, members of the European Parliament, scholars and entities of the Political and Security Committee, the Subcommittee on Human Rights, as well as 2 national foundations, and this is something that we consider unacceptable. It doesn't answer our legitimate concerns. We want China to engage in a dialogue with the EU human rights, not to continue to be confrontational. This is about the sanctions and the answer from China. But the Council today had other important issues. Maybe the most important one, because it's going to be considered by the leaders at the next European Union Council, is Turkey. With ministers, we assessed the European Union-Turkey relations. In view of the joint report we prepared with the Commission for the members of the European Council next Thursday. This was broadly considered a good basis for the debate of heads of state and government, although ministers provided also additional assessment. As the report recognizes, since last December, we have seen some signals in the right direction from the Turkish leadership and steps towards de-escalation in the Eastern Mediterranean. Drilling and exploratory vessels were withdrawn from the Cyprus Exclusive Economic Zone. Rhetoric has toned down, and Turkish authorities have expressed their interest in a strong relationship with the EU. Still, the process of de-escalation in the Eastern Mediterranean remains fragile, and de-escalation efforts need to be sustained. At the same time, the domestic situation in Turkey remains of serious concern, including the threats to close one of the major opposition parties, the HDP, and the withdrawal of Turkey of the Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, better known as the Istanbul Convention. You will have seen the statements I issued on these matters, expressing our strong concern and condemnation, and also the fear that these kind of measures are taking Turkey out of the European path. We agreed with the ministers that it is important to continue encouraging positive development. At the same time, there were a broad agreement that it is important to keep all options on the table in case required. In order to continue preparing the European Union Council, this evening I will also meet with the Foreign Minister from Turkey, Mevlut Cavusoglu, with whom I will comment the report in order to inform the leaders during its meeting. The Council has not taken conclusion about the report on Turkey because certainly it is up to the European Union Council to adopt them. I updated ministers on the recent and upcoming activities in the Western Balkans, such as the Stabilization and Association Council and the recent visit of the European Union Special Representative Miroslav to the region. We are going to have a full discussion on Western Balkans on the upcoming Foreign Affairs Council. Let me stress that the Western Balkans have been and will continue to be a priority for the European Union. Other main point in the agenda were the southern neighborhood, a region that the pandemic has hit very hard, and we need to strengthen our relationship because business as usual is not an option. Young people are leaving and we need to do better and more. We need a stronger, closer and more effective partnership. The ministers welcome the communication on southern neighborhood, and from now on we will focus on invest and engage more with our southern partners. On Russia, we had a brief discussion in Russia. Ministers reconfirmed that the 5 guiding principles remain relevant, that the principles that have to drive our relationship with Russia, and that within those principles we will be pushing back, containing or constraining and engaging with Russia as the situation merits it. It's clear that Russia has taken a confrontational stance towards the European Union. The authorities' violation of human rights and international law, both on Russian territory and Chechnya, for example, as we have sanctioned today, as well as beyond its borders, are increasing. The Russian authorities have shown unwillingness to engage on addressing these issues. Russia is drifting towards an authoritarian state and away from Europe, and Europe must draw the consequences of that. The European Union leaders will continue the discussion on this important but difficult relationship later this week at the Council. A specific point was related to Georgia. We discussed Georgia following the intense mediation efforts by the European Union over the past week to overcome the political crisis in the country. I briefed the ministers about the European Union-Georgia Association Council that I chaired last Tuesday and about the European Union mediation efforts through the personal envoy designated by the European Union Council President Charles Michel. This work continues, and I want to reiterate the need for all leaders of Georgian political parties to put the interests of the Georgian people first, to make the necessary compromises and to turn their attention to other urgent issues like coronavirus pandemic, economic recovery and national security. On Myanmar, we took stock of the situation in the country, which sadly continues to deteriorate dramatically following the military coup. There are more than 250 people killed. 250 people killed by the army using armed wars against the demonstrators. We have imposed sanctions against 11 individuals responsible for the ongoing repression. Under the updated sanctions regime, we can also now sanctions on economic entities owned or controlled by the military, as well as those that generate revenues to them. This will be done soon. On Venezuela, we analyzed the situation. After the European Union delegation to Venezuela was declared persona non grata, the stabilization and re-democratization of the country is possible, but it requires consistent efforts. We will engage on that, and we'll discuss also with the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, here in Brussels on Wednesday. The good news is the final agreement that we have been pushing for long between the government and the opposition in order to deblock the resources, the financial resources blocked in current accounts abroad in order to finance buying vaccines for the Venezuelan people. This is something very important, positive. We welcome this agreement. And finally, on Ethiopia. 5 months have passed since the beginning of the so-called law and order operation against the Tigray region. Since then, we have been receiving daily reports of human rights violations of massive scale, including massive rape, torture, and a complete blackout, lack of communication, lack of access to the humanitarian help to the people of Tigray. This is an unacceptable situation that pushes us to continue to put pressure for humanitarian access to be allowed, for independent investigation on human rights abuses to be launched, and for Eritrean troops to be withdrawn from Tigray. We are ready to activate all our foreign policy tools against those responsible for human rights violations. This applies to all parties in the conflict. I have mandated the Finnish Foreign Minister Pekka Haavisto to go back to the region on a second mission and express clearly our capacity to act if this situation continues. We want to have humanitarian access to the region, and we want an independent investigation of human rights abuses, and we want Eritrean troops to be withdrawn. There were other issues, not minor issues, because there are a lot of issues from Lebanon to other parts of the world that has been taken into consideration by the ministers today, but these are the most important ones. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we move on to your questions, and I give the floor to Maria. Maria Psara. You have the floor.
Okay. Thanks for the floor.
Muito obrigado. Estão a ouvir-me? Sim, sim. Por favor, apresente-se e o jornal que apresenta. Maria Psara, Open TV, da Grécia. Gostaria de fazer duas perguntas. Referiu que os ministros fizeram uma avaliação relativamente ao relatório. Pode explorar um pouco mais esse tema? Em segundo lugar, disse também que se tinham discutido os mais recentes desenvolvimentos relativamente à Convenção de Istambul e, sobretudo, no que diz respeito ao partido HDP. Será que estas decisões podem congelar esta agenda positiva com a Turquia? Qual foi a atmosfera na reunião dos ministros de negócios estrangeiros? Muito obrigado desde já. A referência que fiz à decisão, bem como a referência que fiz à Convenção de Istambul, enfim, e as decisões que foram tomadas contra o partido político, são tudo assuntos que têm de ser tidos em consideração. Falei em desenvolvimentos positivos, a questão da retórica, que é um pouco mais calma, e outros avanços noutras frentes, certamente são melhorias, mas há outras áreas onde não podemos, de facto, considerar como desenvolvimentos positivos. temos de levar em linha de conta esse quadro compósito. O Conselho terá, de facto, de pronunciar-se, isto relativamente àquilo que são os aspectos positivos e os aspectos negativos. Nós queremos ter uma relação com a Turquia e considerar a Turquia como um vizinho e como um país candidato e como um país importante com o qual queremos manter as melhores relações, sempre defendendo os interesses dos Estados-membros e os valores fundadores da UE. Os ministros estudaram o relatório e tenho de dizer-vos que fiquei muito grato porque houve uma reação muito positiva, quase unânime. Isto no que diz respeito ao relatório. Mas uma vez que o relatório se dirige ao Conselho Europeu, que vai ter lugar em breve, o Conselho dos Negócios Estrangeiros não adotou um texto de conclusões. Fez algumas considerações relativamente a aspectos específicos que não deixarei de transmitir ao Conselho Europeu para que possa deliberar. Neste momento não posso descer a mais pormenores. Muito obrigada. Atanasios, por favor. Muito obrigado. Cs9tv, Grécia. E também a agência noticiosa cipriota. Referiu-se ao facto de não se terem adotado conclusões. Mas como se vai proceder? Haverá outra forma jurídica de adotar conclusões na próxima quinta-feira? Em segundo lugar, do relatório, percebeu-se que todos precisam de mais tempo para analisar o que está a acontecer. Quanto tempo mais? Depois de junho? Depois das negociações relativamente à questão cipriota? Por último, disse que iria encontrar-se com Cavusoglu esta noite. Como é que vai abordar a questão das negociações? E como é que vão criar condições para a presença da União Europeia nas negociações? Tendo a União Europeia um estatuto de observador. Sim, vamos falar sobre Chipre nessa reunião. Como não? Como não? E nos dias seguintes e nas próximas semanas, e talvez daqui até o verão, vamos ter de acompanhar de forma muito vigilante o comportamento da Turquia. Enfim, tendo em consideração um certo número de referenciais, enfim, as questões relacionadas com a situação em Chipre, a marcha das conversações entre a Turquia e a Grécia, a situação na Líbia e também os desenvolvimentos que sobrevierem a nível interno da Turquia. Será um aspecto, ou melhor, é um conjunto de indicadores que nos permitirão balizar a nossa posição relativamente à Turquia. Há aspectos positivos. Há outros aspectos que não são bons nem positivos. E nós temos de continuar a fazer um seguimento muito atento da situação para nos assegurarmos que a Turquia também está com boas intenções e que está disponível para embarcar de forma séria nas negociações que estão em curso, nomeadamente ver como é que a Turquia se manifesta relativamente ao apoio aos refugiados da Síria. Erika, por favor. Tenho duas questões, se me permite. Quanto à Rússia, disse que, enfim, que vão continuar a defender os 5 princípios que estão em vigor desde 2016. Relativamente a um deles, talvez se ponha mais um pouco o acento tónico. E quanto à Geórgia? Faz sentido, de facto, uma nova visita à Geórgia? E se viajar para a Zónia, para a Geórgia, será que não fará sentido contactar com outros responsáveis? Sim, os 5 princípios orientadores continuam a ser os 5 princípios orientadores. É o quadro em que se inscreve a nossa relação com a Turquia. Todos esses princípios são igualmente importantes. Portanto, há aqui um acordo generalizado entre os Estados-membros e eu próprio acredito piamente que são estes 5 princípios que constituam a base da nossa relação com a Rússia.
depending on the Russian behavior, to push back, to constrain, and to engage. And all of these three verbs are contained inside the 5 guiding principles. But nothing has changed. Yes, the 5 guiding principles are from quite a lot of years ago, but the Minsk agreement continued without being implemented, and the need to increase our resilience, to reach out with Eastern countries, to continue reaching out with the Russian civil society and engaging with needed, continue being perfectly valid. I haven't said that Mr. Danielson is going to go back to Georgia. I said that the mediation efforts continue, but I haven't said specifically how. Maybe, maybe not. It's a personal representative of the President of the European Union Council. We'll see how we can be more effective. But I mean, this mediation effort has not been finished. It will continue. Because we need to continue supporting the process. We need to continue mediating, because Georgia cannot install in a bipolarization that prevents the government from working and the country have the needed stability in order to face the important reforms that they have to do. So we continue supporting this mediation, and we call for all political parties in Georgia to take their responsibility in order to think on the interest of the Georgian people and have the political agreements needed in order to face the important challenges they have in front of them.
Thank you. Mira, you have the floor. Please present yourself and your media. Thanks.
Thank you, Nabila. Thank you for the question. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Rep. 3 points on Venezuela, please. Is this diplomatic crisis with Venezuela affecting the cooperation and the humanitarian aid with the country? The second point is, do you think this crisis, this situation will be normalized before the elections at the end of this year? And third, do you know the points for your conversation with Mr. Blinken? Thank you.
Sobre Venezuela, for sure, no? About Venezuela, for sure, we are going to talk. With the previous American administration, there was no coordination in our approach toward Venezuela. We were in a completely different approach, and they were not a way of working together. With this new administration, I think, I'm sure, it's going to be possible to coordinate our actions in Venezuela and to think about how can we deal with the situation in the country. The humanitarian help is independent of the political considerations. By nature, by definition, humanitarian help will be provided whatever political relationship we are going to have with Venezuela. It doesn't matter if they expose our ambassador, it doesn't matter if we declare persona non grata its ambassador. Humanitarian help is above everything. And certainly there is need for humanitarian help in Venezuela. And frankly speaking, I don't know how the situation will evolve before the next regional and local elections. But these elections can bring a new opportunity to look for an agreement between government and opposition. It has not been possible in the legislative elections. Maybe it could be for the next ones. We'll do our best in order to help.
Thank you. Jacopo, please present yourself and your media.
Thank you. From Politico. I have questions on you understand? Can you hear me?
No, we cannot hear you at all. You're breaking, and maybe you should go closer to your mic.
Chinese pressure on member states to avoid these sanctions. Second question is whether there was a coordination with partners like the US and the UK, and how strong was this coordination? Third question is on the European Council, because I understand there is no China there at the European Council, but in the blog you wrote that together with President von der Leyen I will submit a report on the state of implementation of the EU-China policy to the March European Council. And I was wondering whether you can help us to clarify this, whether then you will have a report on China for the leaders. Thanks.
Yes, it is foreseen that in this Council the High Representative and the Commission will present a balance of what has been the result of the strategy, the China strategy that was approved and became famous because of the word systemic rival. No? I wonder if this communication would have been so noticeable